What's important to you? My mission is to ask as many people as possible this question, because I believe once you know what's important, you can design and build a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. My name is James Dean. I'm a life coach, and I hope this podcast inspires you to uncover what's important to you. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at James Dean Coaching, or connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also learn how I can help you understand what's important at jamesdeancoaching.com. Today's guest invites you on a journey of self-discovery and self-mastery, where you develop skills to create a life that fulfills and energizes you. Your vision of a positive, successful life become clear. Your positive mindset, self-belief, and resilience grow so you become unstoppable. She facilitates one-to-one executive and life coaching, mindfulness, and well-being workshops. All trainings are packed with scientifically backed techniques which are quick and easy to implement into a busy work schedule to support whole system wellness. In this episode, we find out what's important to Sue Landsberg. Hi Sue, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, pleasure to be here, James. Really excited about our conversation.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. So we'll get straight into it. And as always, the first question, Sue, is what's important to you?
Oh, thank you for asking. You know what? This is an amazing question. And as a coach as well, it's something we always ask our clients. And it's really nice to be on the receiving end of that question. And it actually surprised me how exciting it was to really reflect on that question. And my surface answer isn't, as we know with coaching, we tend to go deeper, not always sit with the first thing that comes, to really get curious. So the first things I came with actually were quite surface, but what I came up with really that has been playing out for me in the last while since you posed this question, what's really important, the most important thing to me is maintaining peace of mind.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and this was really interesting to come to this conclusion because I came up with other things of, the usual of what's important to me and, but I kept getting curious, but why? But what's beneath that? And that's when the true treasure comes out, isn't it? When we get more curious and not just taking that first answer. And so ultimately, the most important thing to me is maintaining my peace of mind.
Wow. And when you say that in sense of peace of mind, tell me a little bit more in sense of what does that actually mean or look like to you?
Yeah, well, because I really struggled with really debilitating social and general anxiety, up until the age of it was 38, know. I did not have peace of mind I could count probably on one hand that I had peace of mind. And what that is to me is being able to feel calm in myself, that I'm not in a state of panic, because I lived in a state of discomfort and panic up until that age, honestly, daily. But the thing is, James, I always thought that was my personality. It's just the way I am. And I really had accepted it as that. And I thought there's nothing I can do, but I just got to live with it. And it really was so debilitating. I mean, to the to the extent that I had to leave one job. I avoided so many situations and obviously then missed so many opportunities as a result. And I always felt inside me that if only I could do what I really want to do, and if I could get rid of this life sentence, is how I saw it. And as we now know, and which there's so much more talk about, is that state of threat. It's that you like, it's your sympathetic nervous system has been triggered, and mine was continually triggered. And what we now know is that you can rewire yourself to think differently, and if you think differently, you feel differently, so you act differently. And how I, at the incredible age of 38, how I realized what now seems probably obvious is I had a breakdown and ended up in the doctor, just simply could not go on being as myself. I couldn't be me anymore. And it was the doctor, in what he said to me, you know, as we say, it was that light bulb moment, and that my life changed over time. But in that moment, it changed, because I went into him and I said, I just want all these symptoms to stop. I can't do this anymore. I was really quite a mess, as you can imagine. And it was him who said, Sue, even if you get rid of all the symptoms, it's still going on inside you. It's the way you're thinking. So it's not going to change everything. I always felt if I could stop people seeing, you know, on the exterior, how clearly distressed and stressed and panicked I was, then I could fool everybody, you know, and myself. And so it was him who triggered, because I'm a very deep thinker anyway, which isn't good if you're if you're someone who struggles with anxiety. You can be too much in your head and really overanalyze and catastrophize everything. And that's what I had done for that many years. So I'd gotten into that pattern of thinking. So it was a professed prophecy that I was living out daily, but I didn't know how much I was sabotaging myself. And nobody ever said anything. So, or like, there was no help or support. It was like, almost like, ignore it and it'll go away, or pay no attention to it. Or I thought, well, it's just the way I am, and I can't exactly change how I am. How wrong was I? And I now know that. So I went home and I thought, okay, I had medication to start off, and there was talk of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and what else I could do. And I actually really just helped myself from there. I started exploring, if I've trained myself to think that way, then surely I can train myself to think another way. And that was the starting point of the rest of my life of freedom and peace of mind. Because over time, I really challenged what I was thinking, really became aware of how that made me feel. And I started playing with that, of like, how about if I change what I'm thinking, even if I don't believe it at the start? And I really noticed the impact that had on me. And I thought, wow. And then I practiced it more and more and more. And that then became stronger. So it became more of my way of being. Now, this did take time, but I did see incremental changes really straight away, because I saw how, because when you have really severe anxiety like that, you are very aware of the symptoms in your body, because it's, as we know, the mind and body are obviously connected. And so my body was always sending out these triggers to me, but I couldn't manage them. I didn't know what to do. And so, like, I mean, I remember also there was at least one occasion where I couldn't see, everything went black, I couldn't hear, so my senses shut down out of a panic attack. And then the more that begins to happen, the more you preempt that happening, the more this type of thing does happen. So, but I just didn't know how to stop it. And as I said, I did think it was my personality. So I really became like so intrigued and so impressed by the power actually I had within myself. Because when you have that severe anxiety, everything feels out of control. Your exterior world, there's no control. I couldn't control what was going on within me. I couldn't control anything. So life was like a tornado, literally. And I just didn't know what to do about it. So this gave me back control. So I had control over how I was thinking, and that changed how I felt. So it began to change all the things I used to be able to do or could never do. And that's okay. So I'm 50 now. So that was when I was 38. So that's 12 years. And I can honestly say, when I say I'm a different person, I have learned to be able to manage the anxiety, the overwhelm, and I have made or created my world to be one of having a peaceful state of mind, because I now know how to do that, because I've trained myself. And then I started learning a lot about mindfulness. So how to harness the power of the mind to stay in the moment. I've done a lot of breath work, so calming the body, which calms the mind. And I've been continually studying on how to most effectively manage myself to reclaim my power. So in doing so, I am not easily triggered or affected by what's going on outside me. And it has been such an incredibly empowering journey in doing that. And that's why I'm so passionate about the work I do, because it's really supporting people to harness that personal power that they have within themselves. And, you know, when we can understand and manage ourselves more effectively, we can show up as a better version of ourselves. And in doing so, we reduce the stress levels, because let's face it, there is endless triggers and stressors out there, and so much that we can't control.
Yeah.
But we can learn, and like that, as you know, it's a skill to learn to control and manage and understand yourself, so that you can, as I say, show up as because the more peace of mind you have, you're choosing to stay in a state of calm and ease, rather than choosing, and I say choose because it is when we realize we have that choice, rather than choosing to go down the route of thoughts and going deep into stories and being absorbed by situations that don't serve us and are not of benefit to us. So it's learning to choose your state, and a state that better serves you, which will better serve also everyone around you. Yeah. So I am continually growing that, and it has transformed so radically my whole life that I understand the power we have within us. And that's why maintaining that state of mind, and it is a maintaining, because I could easily choose or let go of all the healthy and those practices that I now have in order to maintain that state of mind. you know, if I let go of all that, I would, you know, there is a chance that I would be more in a state of allowing more threat, more stress in, putting me in that state. So that is why, for me, maintaining peace of mind is the root of everything.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for sharing all that, because I would just want to listen to it all, because it was so really incredibly powerful to listen to. Because I think, you know, when, you know, I haven't spoken to many people, I suppose, who've had, you know, gone through that level of what you said about regarding anxiety, you know,
Yes.
to the point that you're saying, you know, to the I don't know if it's my word, but to the extremes that you were saying, in a sense of
Yeah.
losing your senses and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really powerful to listen. So I really do thank you for sharing it. And I can see now, in a sense of the way you word, in the sense of peace of mind, and how it's important to you. One of the thing though that struck me in so much as well when you said it, or what you were explaining there, was, and that sort of that trio of your thoughts followed by your emotions followed by your behaviors. But what I was hearing though a lot from what you were saying is, when you're in that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to make sure if I understand it. So when you're in that state of almost anxiety, or in that sort of where you are in that sense, it's all in the head. You know
Oh,
what I mean? It
yeah.
seems so much. But when you were
Yes.
explaining that peace of mind, it almost, to me, if I'm hearing right, was allowing it to come out of your mind a bit more, come a bit more into your body. Where you said before, your body was just almost
Yes.
like it was the symptoms, as you called it, or it was the sort of, you know, so whatever. So what I'm interested in the sense of like the difference of how your body also feels, or how you felt
Yeah.
in this peace of mind state versus the anxious state.
Yes, absolutely. It's like I always say, and I had learned, you know, your body is your internal weather gauge. It tells you how you're feeling. And mine was in a constant state of, you know, from I would get very, very hot, very, like, you know, when you tune into what's happening in my body, you know, the panic, the heart pounding, your stomach churning. Like, I mean, all you have to do is become aware of, when did you have like butterflies in your tummy, or your heart start beating really fast? What are you thinking in that moment? What are you feeling? And when we learn what it's telling us, because the body always tells you if we listen. We're often too busy, or certainly in the Western world, where we live very, very much in our heads. And, you know, something I said last week is, something's only true if you accept it as true. And we tend to, rather than be curious and challenge what we're thinking, we often, you know, think, oh, well, I think this, so it must be true. But there are so many, if you take one situation, there can be so many different perspectives of that situation, that, am I choosing the best the perspective? First of all, is it true? Is it factual?
Yeah.
Where is this belief or this thought coming from? What's the grounding behind it? What have I got to support this? Or is it just my mind racing on automatic thoughts because I'm stuck in that pattern of that way of thinking? Or can I look at this from a different perspective? And that's where coaching, as you know, is really powerful. You get to see different perspectives. And when you can see something from a different angle, it changes the way you perceive it, which changes the way you feel. So yeah, if you learn to, you know, and the thing is, the more you practice these things, the more adept you are going to become at, you know, at living it out. The more you tune into your body, and so I used to do this like a few times a day, and now I do it automatically because it's become a habit. So, you know, it's about creating healthy habits that serve you better. So tuning into your body a few times a day and just saying, how's my body feeling? What's it telling me? Because often we ignore the signals in the body and we're staying in the head, as you said, and the head Well, it can go spinning off, like, I mean, on a fast spin cycle in the washing machine. And that's how your head can feel, right?
Yeah.
But if you can learn to get out of the head, so in the type of coaching that I do, which has been so powerful as well, and it brings the mindfulness and all of that so beautifully together, is tuning into, okay, what's my head saying? Challenging it, you know, what is my heart saying? Because that's a whole different intelligence.
Yeah.
What is my heart telling me? What am I feeling rather than what am I thinking?
Yep.
And tuning then into the gut. What's my gut instinct here? So this has been so powerful. And again, a practice is in anything that's coming up, for any decisions I make, or in fact, anything I do, it's about practicing. Okay, what's my heart telling me here? What am I feeling? What's my gut instinct? And it can be a very different answer that you get from each one, and which it's not necessarily that anyone is more correct over the other, but we know that the head can spin stories because we are wired to rather look for threat and to keep us safe, because that's how we've been wired from caveman days. So we're wired to look for threat, and God only knows there's so much threat potentially can be perceived as out there. But so it's about harnessing how we look at that and tuning into our other intelligences, because we now know the head, heart, and gut are there are three brains, and we're not utilizing and tuning in to harness the full power of our whole system intelligence. So getting used to saying, what's my head saying? What's my heart saying? What's my gut saying? And really listening, and not just going with the first thing that comes off the top of your head, taking that space, learning to just take a moment. And we know that the breath is the quickest and most effective way to calm your nervous system. So if we're triggered by something in the mind, in the brain, the head brain, then calming our whole system through breath work calms the body, which calms the mind, so you think more logically, more calmly. And in the meantime, tune into the head, heart, and gut. You're potentially going to get a very different, you're going to have a very different, potentially very different outcome in a decision you would make, or in how you relate to people, or how you potentially react rather than respond, which can have consequences, as we all know. Look, I mean, we're all human, and it's a constant practice. So the more we do all of this, the more we're helping ourselves to make more wise decisions with greater clarity in a state of calm. Because we all know, if we've made irrational decisions, impulsive decisions, and later we go, oh, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? If only I had, been able to take a step back, or I wish I could take back those words. But if we have these techniques to use in the moment, we are really helping ourselves so much not to self-sabotage.
I think the what you were saying there in relation to the head, heart, and gut, I think it's so important. And I think from my experience as well, personally, and then again with working with people, when it comes to that sort of, because you were saying there, and I said it myself, like we do spend so much time in our heads, and that's washing machine sort of analogy I can completely relate with, and I think many people can. And it's the first time, I think, or the first times that you try to sort of, or someone says, oh, well, what does, where do you feel it, or what does your heart say, or what does your gut say? There's a resistance there, because it's actually, by going into sort of especially into your heart and even into your gut, it really is the concept of opening up to vulnerability. And it's because it's actually allowing you to maybe feel an emotion, that you maybe are trying to either suppress, ignore, don't want to deal with. And then a lot of the times it's like, because it's even then that the brain is still taking over and thinking, oh no, but if you open that box or open
Yes.
that door and have a look inside of there, you're not going to like it. And it's trying to sort of, you say that self-sabotage before to even look at yourself, not even, to even go, as you say, it's within you. And that's why sometimes we can look for the external things to make it better and stuff. And because there's that fear of actually, well, if I do go and have a look at myself now, what am I going to expose? And I think from what you were saying earlier, like that's the process though. That's where you will find to be able to move forward. And I think the other point making this as well is like, and I think we went to we did the same or similar coaching sort of education and methodology. And there is a thing about when, from a coaching perspective, that I think we may share is like, it's not always about the grand thing when we're working with someone. It's not always about some big shiny neon goal. It's about, well, actually, how do you actually just want to be?
Yes.
And that's actually, from even saying your story, a bigger thing and a bigger achievement, or whatever word you want to call it, success, than something that maybe the grand thing is like, well, actually, do you just, as you said, do you want to even have peace of mind? How would that be different? So challenging yourself to go into your heart and gut, as scary as it is probably the key thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, yes, I hear you. And what I hear is like, I don't have time for that, or, oh no, I'm not going there. But looking at you can see it as being vulnerable or being brave. But if you want lasting peace, and what I used to call my business is inner happy, if you want that inner contentment and, as I say, peace of mind, you won't get it externally, or it'll be fleeting.
Yeah.
But if you want lasting inner peace, happiness, contentment, the only way is to go within yourself and explore and become curious with yourself. And what's the cost of not going there? Are you going to continually, the amount of people who think, if I just get to this level in work, or if I just earn this much money, or if I can just live in that house, but then they get there and then they still feel unfulfilled, or they think, I've ticked every box that life tells me or society tells me to do to be happy and content and fulfilled. That almost that elusive feeling of like, but where is it then? It's within you.
Yeah, completely.
It's about knowing who you are. And when you say about what's important to you, it's like we really look at in coaching is knowing, what do you really value? Never mind what society might.
Yeah.
Sure, in society, sure, everybody's trying to sell you something because they all want to earn a living and make money. Not all, but clearly there are people who are, But so if you're constantly listening to what's outside of you, what they're trying to give you, you're not really listening to yourself. And your heart and your gut bypass that mind, the head brain that is always analytical and looking at what's out there more and more, and you're just missing so much valuable information on what's truly important, as you ask, to you, and how is that showing up in your life, and challenging your thoughts and your thought patterns. That is the key to inner peace and lasting, sustainable fulfillment and happiness.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
say that with great conviction because although I do obviously believe we're always learning and there's always more to learn about ourselves, about, continual growth and development. But I absolutely feel by going there
Yeah.
look, I was at such a point with anxiety, there wasn't much lower to go. There was a bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So the cost of staying there versus working through and where I am now, oh, I wouldn't trade it. It has taught me so much. I now know I'm more resilient. I can manage myself. I understand myself, and I'll continue to develop that. But if I had never gone there, where would I be now? I would dread to think.
Yeah.
So it's a case of looking of like, well, if I don't do some personal development work or really look at myself, knowing from those who have done it, they're not just trying to sell you, they're trying to tell you that this is the way of to find maybe what you're actually looking for, and only you can do it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's the key thing, in a sense of like having that you say, the freedom to explore, the freedom to be curious and actually understand what is it you actually want, believe, feel, value, to it's that thing as well as when I'm ever talking to anyone, especially in a coaching perspective or even just in general, it's like there's no right or wrong.
No, sure.
We're so, it's another part of, I think, of almost the condition, especially I think maybe maybe more in Western sort of societies. There's a right or wrong. There's a pass or fail. There's a yes or no. There's an up or a down. There's everything can be quite binary and quite and which has to happen. We have to have it. But it's functional. There has to be some sort of functionality. But you say functionality, that doesn't have to be. If you become functional, you're missing so much. Like it's kind of like that. What you were just saying about the sort of, oh, it's transactional. It's like, well, okay, that's all well and good, but it's so surface.
Yes, yeah, and exactly. It really is. And if you're living in that space, fine. If you're happy and you're content, exactly. It's like, well, what do you want? And it's, if there's something missing or there's something more you want, then really looking at, well, what is it? And how, like, I mean, when we talk about, you could say, I really want the good job and I really want the big house, the car, whatever it is, and the holidays twice a year. But are your values showing up in that? So if I value something really different, but I'm doing what I believe will bring me what I think I want, and I'm not, then I wonder why I'm not happy, like we said. It's just really good to become curious about that.
Yeah, completely.
Otherwise, we become dissatisfied and we become grumpy, for want of a better word.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then we blame the outside world of like, oh, it's my job, it's my boss, it's the people down the road, it's the tax man. Okay, we'll all blame the tax man, but we're all continually going to blame outside of ourselves. And I get that, but if you want the deep, lasting change, it's about tuning into you. How is what you really want showing up? And what, as you said, it's not about doing one or the other. It's about what could I maybe do a little bit more of or a bit less of? And it's not an all or nothing, exactly. And there's no one right way or right path to go. However, there is the one way you're going to get, in my opinion, And in my experience, and from people who are in a similar situation, say, like, I mean, if they've done, for example, you know, I never realized before doing coaching how much self-awareness grows from that. And that's the key to, that really is, in my opinion, and from the work I've done on myself, that is the way to finding inner happiness and peace. And if you want change in your life and you find yourself complaining about things outside of you, well, you can't always control that. So maybe the next option would be to look at yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that comes up for me with all this as well is that when we look at that question or look at ourselves and those questions of, well, what do I actually really want, and what do I, you know, to match that value that you may have. The thing that I think that people struggle with, or is a blocker, is the concept. And I think it's changing now as society changes. But I think it's the idea that you can change your mind. You can do something radically different, whether it be within your career, where you live, the people the people you hang around with or are friends with. You know, we have more autonomy in a sense of what we decide to do with our lives than probably any generation before. You know, so you know, the thing that I was chatting to someone previously, and it was really interesting. We say now, because I don't have any children, in sense of, you know, and especially at school leaving age, whereas now where this chappie had like the sort of sort of school leaving age, where they're now telling young people is like, you'll probably have 3 or 4 careers in your life. We only have to go back to my generation school. It was like, well, no, you want to get a job and stay there. Do you know? So the amount of autonomy and changing of mind. So I think for you know, people listening, is like, you can do all this work and then you still have that feel, oh no, but I have to stay here and safe and stuff. It's like, you do look inside and you find something, actually, you know what, that's screaming at me. You can change your mind and do something radically different.
I've moved country 5 times.
Love it.
I have different I've had different, you know what, I hate labels. I am an engineer, I am whatever it might be, a dentist, I am a computer technician. You might be, but you might be other things as well, or you might be something more. You know, and growing up, well, like, I mean, one thing was, okay, it probably wasn't a great idea at the time, but was at my wedding when I was told as the bride, you can't make a speech. I was like, but who says? Is that, my thing always was, is that in the law book? And I always challenged that of like, who says I can't do something, or like, why can't I? And especially having gotten over that terrible anxiety, like I said, I really embrace the freedom that I have given myself. But I had, I suppose, imprisoned myself as well, but realizing that, of like, so now I'm like, but I can do anything I want to do. And if somebody else can do it, well, why can't I? We really do limit ourselves, or, you know, those beliefs that come from our parents and their generation of like the pensionable job, and the latest I heard was your forever home. I'm finding I'm like, okay, really? Yeah. No, well, you know, each to their own, but you can see these generational beliefs screaming out sometimes. And I think it's just about becoming curious within yourself of like, as I said, what am I thinking? And is it really true? And why? Where does it come from? And
Yeah.
why do I believe that? And is there another way? You know, because yeah, I changed my whole life a number of times. I always explore. Some of my highest values are, you know, trying new things, because I was so scared to try anything for so long. Now I have become, and I was so uncomfortable for all those years. Now I changed the way I look at that, and I am comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if that makes sense, because I see it differently. I don't see it as being uncomfortable or scared. I see it as an exciting opportunity. I've just reframed the way I look at things, which changes the way I feel about it. So I embrace all new experiences, and I really look for different things I can try out and do. Whether that's from, I collaborate with different people. I try different streams of income. I have a few different things I look at purely to expand myself and not limit myself. And it really gives you self-belief and self-confidence, and doors open because you are being more open to what's out there. And it's also more fun and more fulfilling because, you know, let's face it, we really do need more fun in our lives. And what I realized is you actually got to make it happen for yourself. It's not going to come to you. Like, I mean, the world can be hard and heavy, or you can seek out what is fun and enjoyable and create the lightness every day, not just waiting for the weekend or waiting for some event, but it's up to you to create that daily, you know, to sustain who you are, because again, you have the choice of how, to a great extent, how your life is going to pan out. You know, you can have two people living the exact same life, but one can perceive it and experience it because of how they perceive it very differently. So it's realizing that you have the choice.
Massively.
And taking that personal responsibility for having the assertiveness to take that action, because we're often looking for the quick fix outside of us, or, as I said, blaming. But there's so much autonomy, as you mentioned, that we're not all fully harnessing.
Completely. And I think it's, I mean, that's exactly the way you put it there, in the sense of the two things that really struck me at the end there was like taking the responsibility right now, and then having that choice. And it's instead of there has to, I think, and when you're doing those things in sense of wanting to make a change, wanting to grow, whatever it is that as an individual, and then this takes the inner work that we were talking about as well. There has to be a point as well, though, when you're able to, whether it be draw a line in the sand, let go of stuff. You know, don't have that sort of like, oh, I wish I, wish I coulda, shoulda, sort of like, done this years ago, because it takes you back into the head. It takes you back into that washing machine spin of whether it be regret or guilt or all these sorts of sort of thoughts and emotions, again, that don't serve. You have to go, well, actually, but I'm going from now. This is, and I'm going to go forward, because otherwise you can berate yourself forever. So
Absolutely.
There's that freedom of choice, and there's also the freedom of now. No, there isn't instead of the freedom of holding yourself to something that you cannot change.
Exactly. Because and again, it comes down to choice, because we've all had stories and all had things happen, and we all have a past, but it's about seeing, again, awareness. Am I going to hold on to that forever. Because when you see that you're giving your power away by doing that and staying in that space, as you said, give yourself permission to draw a line in the sand and create. You have a blank slate every day. And what a canvas. What picture are you going to paint?
Yeah.
Do you want to stay on the one that, you know, you've done all those years? And maybe you do, but you can create something totally new, and it's up to you. And that's what's exciting, is you only need to stay where you were or where you are if you choose to.
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
And there is so much, and one little change can change everything. But it starts with the change in, I think, it has to change within you.
Yeah.
And that slight shift can change your whole life.
Completely, totally,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. One of the questions or things I like to ask in the podcast, and it's just purely out of a personal interest, I suppose, is that one of the things that I like, and it's important to me in some ways, is I do like quotes or turns of phrases, things like that, and also then how, not just for the sake of it, how then it's applied. So are there any sort of either quotes or phrases and things that you use or that are important to you?
Yeah. Again, I gave this some thought, and there are some wonderful people that I love to read from and listen to. But one I came up with that stood out is by Wayne Dyer. And it is, peace is the result of training your mind to process life as it is, rather than as how you think it should be.
Yeah.
And that really resonated so well, because as many of us, most do know, but some people don't realize the power of being able to retrain your brain. We used to think that the brain is fixed. We now know you can rewire your brain your whole life.
Yeah.
So what you focus on is what's going to grow stronger. And that's what I did, was like my automatic behavior was putting myself in a state of threat and anxiety for everything. So that wiring in my brain was stronger, more dominant. So what I have done is through these practices, I have rewired my brain to stay more in a sense of calm, ease, positive, outcome. And that is training your brain. So peace for me is the result, the direct result of retraining your mind to process life as it is. And that's where the mindfulness comes in. It keeps you in the present. What's going on right now, rather than in the past, is where the anxiety, and rumination, and we feel like, sometimes people feel like they've gone through this thing and it was such a big part of their life that I can't let go of it because it was so big. But I'd say, what's the cost of holding on to it? And what if you could let that go? What does that look like? And that can shift the mind, and rather than how it should be. Because also when I was in that state of like, I got divorced, so I was like, but my marriage, it's not meant to be this way. It's not, this isn't meant to happen to me. It happens to other people. Again, staying in that state doesn't serve anyone of how things should be, rather than how they are. Like I have this thing also of like, I did a talk on when I came back to Ireland here. I was away for 25 years and moved back here 4 years ago. And I had this ideal of how things should be. And I had this thing of, oh, my 2 kids and I will go get our first real Christmas tree ever, and it'll be so beautiful. And I had in my mind this whole gorgeous experience well, that fell flat on its face. How things should be and how things ought to be and how they actually are can be very different. And when we get caught up in how they should be and ought to be, we are potentially setting ourselves up for a crash, because life isn't always that way. And when you're practicing mindfulness and you are more in the moment and you are using the coach approach on yourself, then you become more adept at dealing with what is rather than how it should be. And you become more flexible in your mind and more resilient and more adaptable. So you are more able for what is rather than fixating on how things could, should, or ought to have been. And you have a greater capacity to let go and move on, which reduces our stress levels and our anxiety. And we tend to be happier because all we have is right now. And that's where also grounding is very important to me. Keeping myself really grounded, and it's a constant practice. That's a whole other talk, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I mean, the full quote is amazing, but even just that last bit again of the way it should be, the way it is versus the way it should be, is that's a really, really powerful thing. And I think, and it's definitely one that is really applicable and practical in some ways, and also but usable, and you can put it in, and it really relates back to the sort of the theme of this conversation, in a sense of like that sort of, when you look in again and look into yourself and sort of go from the, the head, heart and gut approach, that gives you what it is. You're stripping away that should be by going internally, and it's a coming out of the head and going into everything else, because it's kind of like when you're asking those questions internally, in sense of, well, where am I feeling it, and what does that mean? How do I feel? What is that saying to me? It's coming from you. There's no there's no pretense there when you really do ask yourself those questions and allow the real answer to come forward. And that whole, you say that thing of should, and that creating that expectation of and I can completely get, as you say, like the sort of like the magical sort of like this is, the perfection of stuff. But it's, and I think though, it's like the irony in those things, in a sense of, things, we want things to go a certain way, or we want things to happen. Okay, we're all human. But I think the irony is the excitement, the fun, the interesting stuff is in the adversity. Also the growth in that, but also, even if you think back on something, the most sort of the silliest stories that maybe from your childhood or colleagues or friends or works, are where things went wrong, when things went a different way, because it's how then you react, how that's in some ways again about resilience as well, in sense of this is just it is what it is. We carry on. So absolutely. It's a really important lesson.
Exactly. And how are you perceiving it? Can you look at it as a learning and an opportunity? And can you look at it with a sense of humor? Rather than, beating ourselves up about things. And that's, I suppose, where a lot of the work I do too is the self-compassion, is when we recognize, common humanity, that we're all human and we're flawed and we're all learning and growing. But what's happened to me inevitably has happened to so many other people. Sometimes we can think like the spotlight is on us and we're the only one, which increases and exasperates that whole anxiety and isolation. So when we look at like with a sense of humor, it can change everything. So, and again, that's a choice of choosing your state and choosing your attitude in any given moment changes the outcome of the experience, And remembering too, when you look back on things, remember our memory is very seldom accurate. It remembers certain things and it often exaggerates and exasperates things. So when you say, I remember this and this, just be mindful of what you're taking from that memory, and that memories aren't always reliable.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, that's a really valuable thing to hear there. And it's like whether the story's like the story can start growing legs, and every time you tell it, it just gets more and more dramatic, or more and more exciting, or more funny, whatever way you want to embellish it. But and then say that way, if you're in that space of in a more sort of negative space, if you embellish those negative stories, it can take you further into something as well.
Oh, it'll take you deeper. And asking yourself, what story am I telling myself here? And what's the truth? And often becoming like that fly on the wall of like, when you become more objective and the observer of what's going on. So like, James, you could say to yourself, if James finds himself becoming overwhelmed by something, or detaching yourself and saying, and if you say to yourself, what's James telling himself here? Or how could James see this differently? Or how would somebody else see this? You become the observer of it rather than being immersed in it. And that can help us to see from that, that almost like that helicopter view, and gain perspective. So lifting us out of the deep thoughts and emotion to see more objectively can change everything. It's about taking that space, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any other instance of individuals or people that you think that have had either an influence or importance in you, whether it be public eye or more private?
Oh, yeah. Well, I lived in South Africa for 15 years, and Nelson Mandela was an absolute role model and figure of hope for so many reasons. And it was very meaningful that I could get to go visit Robben Island and the buildings where he made his speech when he was released. And it just made it more real, I guess. And what I admired in him is really his ability to, again, maintain that hope and that strength, again, within himself, because, he had that ability and he harnessed that while maintaining such love and compassion within himself. And to me, he radiated, the gift that humanity can be if we allow ourselves to ourselves and to each other. The Dalai Lama, I absolutely love too. 𝙤𝙤 𝙤𝙤, who was an absolute master of, mindfulness and so many great teachings. But there's people around us every day. And as you and I know, we all have the ability to, and we do, well, not have the ability, we do impact each other. And how, again, I come back to how are we using that? Are we aware of how we're showing up to best serve ourselves and positively impact others, knowing that our energy is contagious and it creates a ripple effect? So I always like to at least think that I'd like to believe that my wish is to leave people feeling or thinking better than before they spoke to me.
I'm
sure many people would disagree, but I like to think and I like to feel that I bring warm connection and support. Because of what I went through and having felt so isolated and alone, I really feel now, and I suppose that is what has brought me into the realm of training and coaching, in that I really love people to feel listened to, because I know gosh, how important that is. And we're all so busy now. How many people feel really non-judgmentally, like listened to and understood and supported? And I feel if we all had that space, wow, if I had had that years and years ago, you know, I wouldn't have gone through what I did, but I feel I went through what I did to come to where I am to give back. And so, yeah, I like to, hopefully that's the impact that I have, and that's what I like to continue to do.
That's brilliant. Sue, it's been an amazing experience to chat to you in this way. It really has. I've really enjoyed it. It's been wonderful. I do have one more question for you before we finish up, which is, what's important for your future?
Yeah, great. You've great questions. For my future, is to maintain that peace of mind. For my future, I see what the work I have done on myself and that continual learning and growth, what it has given me. I'm very excited to continue to learn, to expand myself, to challenge myself, because to see what more is possible. And that excites me, because I see in those 12 years that I've really embraced learning about who I am, who I really am, what I really want, and know that I'm continually growing and changing and allowing that. I'm very excited for the rest of my life to see where can that go and how can I positively use that in the world. It might sound very cliched or very big picture, but that really is. It's like, gosh, how can I, I really love exploring new places, new people, learning new things, you know, because we don't know what we don't know. So the more we put ourselves into what we don't know, the more we will know.
No, absolutely.
And it's about then sharing that, sharing what I have that can support others, and that we can collectively all support and help each other and make the world a better place, really.
No, absolutely. And what I love about that, in the way you said it there, is it's kind of like it's not the should, it's the sort of, well, what will the possibilities be? And that's you could see it in when you were saying it. It's like just the possibilities that are exciting.
Because I'm not keeping myself fixed on any track. I know so long as my values are showing up in everything I do, and I am continually challenging how I think, which I've become very accustomed to, I know that I am then showing up in the best way for me, and I'm using all my skills to leverage what I do, which enables me to feel happier and keep me healthier. So if I can show up as the best me, then I'm of most value to myself and everyone around me. And so I'm not closing doors on how I do that, because that's limiting yourself again and labeling yourself. So I really try and steer clear of that, and just be open and curious.
I love it. As I said, it's been amazing to chat to you. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I obviously want to make sure that that you're supported by all those people out there and people listening. So we will, of course, share all your details on the show notes. But if you want to just give a shout out now to where people can connect and follow you online, go ahead.
Well, thanks, James. Look, I'm on all social media platforms. If you look up Sue Landsberg, you will find me. I'm located in Galway, in the west of Ireland, and my website is SueLandsbergCoaching.com. And that's it. So, you know, it's pretty easy to find me.
That's brilliant. Fantastic stuff. And as I said, all of those details will be in the notes as well, so you'll be able to click on the links. Sue, once again, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks, James. Absolutely loved chatting to you. So thanks a million too.
Thank you for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment and share. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Again, you can follow me at James Dean Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. Connect with me on LinkedIn or find out more about me on jamesdeancoaching.com.